Okay, we should be on.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. If you are looking for the May meeting of the Research Committee for the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission, you are in the right place. This is our monthly meeting. We have just started recording. My name is David Armenti. I'm a commissioner and chair of the committee. Thank you for joining us. So I think I know most of our folks that are participating here, but please, if you can, announce yourself in the chat so we know who's participating with us today. And if you're so inclined, during the hour together, you can of course unmute yourself and participate in the conversation as we move through our agenda. And I'll just take a moment here to mark up who we have. All right, thank you so much to everybody. Good to see you all. So I did attach we did attach an agenda to the commission website as well as to the out from there, depending on our timing. So I know that Amy is kind of with us, but maybe not fully with us because she's in the airport. But I know I had on the agenda for public hearing updates, so we can perhaps touch on conversations that are moving toward additional public hearings. I will, again, if Amy is available to speak to that, great. But if not, she also sent me an email update, so I can relay at some point where some of those planning pieces are. But we can actually start with some of the debrief on the Frederick County hearing. So I think most here would know that we held a public hearing in Frederick County on Saturday, April 13th, which was in commemoration of 3 lynching victims in that county, James Bowens, James Carroll, and John Biggis. We had multiple descendants and community members that participated in providing testimony, some of which we had more coordination with than others ahead of the actual hearing. So that's something that I wanted to discuss and really lift up, is the need for additional follow-up and coordination around that research. Brett, Donna, are you with us?
Yes. we thought the hearing went very well. We were impressed. Um, Two things that we noted was one, if I recall correctly, the absence of elected officials uh, from the county. And the second was it struck us that further documentation of the relationships to the people who spoke uh, should be in order. There didn't seem to be any firm documentation of the relationships. And that's of the two observations, I think that's the more significant one.
Yes, and I think that'll be part of our task. Like I said, to follow up on the research as well as coordination with those individuals and what research they found. So I know for at least one of those individuals that participated, Mr. Freeland, you did have some conversation and coordination with him ahead of the hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, we have his DNA report that links him to, I believe it's Bowen. And we've done some genealogy, but it's not confirmed yet in terms of what his relationship actually is. We know there is a DNA match, but we're still looking at his actual genealogy. He kind of, as I think he mentioned in the hearing, he kind of backed away from us for a while in the weeks and days leading up to the hearing, and I think he had some reasons for that. But we'll be back in touch with him. The gentleman from Baltimore, you just mentioned his name and it slipped my mind, but I think it might be helpful if Commissioner Snowden maybe could help us make the connection with him or renew our connection with him to do some additional documentation of his relationship. Because if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Snowden is the one who pointed us toward him some time ago. So that's our reaction to the hearing.
And I know Commissioner Snowden is with us, so if he wanted to comment on that, or that could also be some email follow up that we can support there as related to Mr. Ashby Bay, who
Yes.
participated in the hearing. And I think it would be appropriate if in the follow up to include at least one of us on the communications with Mr. Freeland and others who participated. That way, if there's a follow up Zoom conversation or something, then we can be involved in those follow up steps.
Will do.
And then, so those were two of the five. One who was actually on the schedule to participate on behalf of the biggest family was unable to attend and was actually replaced by two other individuals who were also part of the biggest family. So I wrote names down, but I don't know that I have the correct spelling, and I do not have contact information for those individuals. So that'll be a note for myself to, I guess, work with our local steering partners to see if they can connect us there and
Okay.
get more information.
All right.
And I do want to note Amy's message in the chat that there were elected officials, including the mayor. I just don't think that we had kind of an official, I don't know that we had an official acknowledgement of them. There certainly wasn't a speaking role. And part of that was I believe partially upon recommendation by our local partners that we wanted to, most prioritize and privilege descendants and other community members who are going to be speaking on the legacy and the impact during our time together with the hearing.
Can I jump in,
Please.
David? One of the things that the logistics committee talked about was the lack of acknowledgement of those elected officials. And I spoke to the fact that the local planning committee actually did not want them acknowledged. But we also talked about how the descendants identify that they wish they had heard from the elected officials and or police and or ... So one of the things that I am making note of is that we need to listen to the local planning committee, but we also need to hear what the descendants might want as well. And so it's almost like a third partner, unless a descendant is part of the local planning committee, because I don't think the descendants, my sense is the descendants may not have quite gotten what they wanted from the hearing. They got a lot. I think there was a lot that they got, but I think that there was also a gap. So just something to sort of make a note of and consider as we continue moving forward.
I would agree with that. This what Amy just said, because part of what I think was reiterated in the logistics meeting was that part of our core mission and or mandate from the commission is accountability, and that even is, quite frankly, pinpointed and illustrated through what we have Heritage Associates doing for us, but we have any number of individuals doing. The records that we have them look at are records which speak to the Attorney General's office, the state's attorney's office, the court offices, the mayor, the governor, the public officials who we believe did not act as they should have, and so justice was not served. So it's, to some degree, it seems incumbent upon what we put forth that it is in the best interest of the law enforcement to become a part of it. And if they're not a part of it, then that, quite frankly, reiterates what one could say the resentment is, or the lingering feelings of misrepresentation or lack of representation or compassion toward marginalized communities which exist today. So if now that's really wordy for something we'd say to people in planning a forthcoming county committee hearing, but I think if we have the same pushback from representatives of the county, then we certainly should bring that up too, so they're aware of all that we have to try to present in these hearings.
And I feel like I understand that distinction. I also would think that, or as I understood, that's part of the recommendation for repair beyond just the hearing itself, is to have, acknowledgement, apology, etc., from those agencies or elected officials from those areas. So, but again, I guess that's part of the value of the recording of the hearing, is that we can reference what the recommendations actually were from community members. I know that there have been hearings where elected officials did have speaking roles that involved some variation of an apology or an acknowledgement of complicity. But that's also a function of how strong the collaboration was in those communities. So I guess we didn't necessarily have those relationships in place with enough time. So definitely noted, and something that will be in our notes moving forward. So again, just to follow up there, Heritage Associates will work with this committee to continue conversation and communication with the descendant participants from the hearing, and to the extent that we need to, we will reach back out to our local steering committee partners as well, particularly and certainly as primary source information is confirmed, or genealogical charts and things that are being produced by Heritage Associates, I'll make sure that those are circulated amongst this committee, and that should also encourage our fellow commissioners and members to chime in and support that process. Any other thoughts or information regarding the Frederick County hearing or the related research?
I'll just echo that I do what you already said, David, which is I think it's important to follow up on some of that newer information that was coming in the week or so prior to the hearing, making sure that the local stakeholders feel like it was not a one and done, but that information will be, we're working on it and we'd like to continue working in collaboration, et cetera. And so both descendants and also that local committee, that there continues to be a dialogue so that information is shared back and out.
David, I wanted to chime in. I had asked Trish to contact a woman named Tonya Brown, Tonya Brown, who's had a relative that was lynched, she said, in Queen Anne's County. And today I had an opportunity to talk with her, and she says no one has reached out to her. I think Trish was supposed to pass it on to the Heritage folks so they could be in touch with her. So again, if somebody could follow up on that, it'd be terrific. Her name is Tonya Brown.
Carl, is this a third potential lynching victim, or is this one of the known?
This is one unknown. I didn't even know it existed. I was shocked when she told me she had a relative of hers that was lynched, and I by email put her in touch with Trish, with the idea Trish would put her in touch with the researchers, sit down and talk with her. Spoke to her again today, and she said no one's been in touch with her. So if we could follow up on that, I'd appreciate it greatly.
When did that communication happen?
I'll tell you in 1 second. I literally have to go online. Oops. Maybe I won't be able to tell you in 1 second. Let me see.
Well, I mean, you don't have to worry about it too much, but I would just say in those cases, you can definitely add me to those communications moving, like myself or Chris, as kind of a research committee representative, and we can help move that process along as well. So if you want to resend that,
I will.
that would be helpful, and we can make sure to follow up.
I will do that. Chris, you look very pensive today. What's that pensive look all about? You generally smiling? I mean, is it something I don't know about that's going on in the world? I've never seen you so pensive.
Oh, it just must be the day of the week. I don't know. I'll try to get at him. It will change. It will change.
And Commissioner Snowden, while you're live here, Brett Tyler from Heritage Associates did mention that perhaps you were the connective tissue with one of the Frederick County descendant participants. Is that true, Mr. Ashby Bay?
There was a name of someone. I'm having trouble calling it now. There was somebody who did call me from Frederick. I just can't. I referred him back to this public hearing that was going to take place. I cannot think of his name at the moment.
Somebody
Okay.
invoked your name, Carl.
Yes.
Somebody definitely invoked your name. I don't know. Was it Ashby Bay? I feel like it was somebody, because Ashby Bay sent that email through MLTRC, and I feel like it was somebody else. So. But yeah, but somebody definitely said my brother Snowden, blah 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 blah. Before they started speaking, really, I think.
Unless my memory is completely off, I thought.
Do you think it was Ashby Bay?
I thought Commissioner Snowden had mentioned Ashley Bay quite some time ago.
Oh, okay.
I think he was the first one to point us in that direction. But in any event, even if I'm mistaken, we might need some help. We'll continue to try, but we might need some help arranging a meet with him.
All right, so I'll be sure to send David, you and Chris that information I sent to Chris. And I think the lady's waiting for somebody just to call her. And we can take it from there.
All right, sounds good. So again, while the hearing is done, the work is not done, and I think that is, that will always be the case, and that's something we need to remind ourselves and the public of, and to Amy's point as well, making sure our local partners understand that it's not a one and done situation, and we'll continue to work with them and support their efforts and make sure that they're represented in the continuing documentation and such. So we do have some follow-ups related to Frederick County, and I appreciate everybody's help with that. We do want to lift up that there are several more conversations going on with various counties or sets of counties where there's potential for hearings to be scheduled, but certainly even before hearings are scheduled, we want to be working with the local committees where they do exist and collaborating around research in an equitable way. So one of the requests from the logistics committee is to have, where possible, our case study profiles updated to 2024, and the as well the Google Drive folders to be updated with materials as best as we can, so kind of that foundation of research can support the coordination of the hearings, and make sure that we are not kind of redoubling our efforts or duplicating work that may have been done already by a local committee, for example. So between this committee and Heritage Associates, knowing what conversations are going on to help align with those as far as the research goes. So one of those counties we have talked about many times previously is Prince George's. I don't have I may not have the most recent update regarding that, but I know that conversations are ongoing. So if somebody can speak better than I can to where we are in that process, and in particular what research goals should be integrated into our workflow, I would cede the floor at this time.
Are you asking what the status of the research is, or what the status of preparing for a hearing is?
The status of preparing for a hearing,
Okay.
I think, is my main question.
Okay. I'll be hosting a meeting next week with PG County. I should say Lindsay Baker is really going to be hosting it, but I'm coordinating a meeting. Chris is going to be there, Lindsay, myself, and member leadership of the PG County will be there. They have asked what our updated research base is, and I would like to be able to go into that meeting with that information. The meeting is Thursday evening. And then Commissioner Coles is working on scheduling a meeting with St. Mary's, Calvert, and Charles, knowing that Charles County does not have a known lynching victim, but still it's a Southern Maryland tri-county hearing that is being planned. And I expect to have a meeting with them in a week or two as well. That what Michelle is point of contact, but I'm trying to bring information into that meeting space. And then Commissioner Hughes is also, she's not assigned to the 3 counties I'm about to mention, but she's helping at least initiate contact with them. Kent County, Caroline County, and Queen Anne's County. So Snowden, Carl, I'm glad to have that information about that potential third. So any information on those 3 counties, there is no commissioner liaison right now, but you know, Elizabeth is really helping out by jumping in and getting it going. But we're trying to do 6 hearings, which would include all 11 counties, and finish by early December. So it's going to be a race between now and the fall. But our clock is winding down, so we really don't have a choice. So those are the 3 hearings, and there's that 7 counties I just mentioned that are really probably most active. But I have emails out to other commissioners as I sit here waiting to hear back. So I think like Hartford Cecil is probably pretty close to being ready, for example. And then we just have another handful after that. I don't want to really share the potential hearing windows for all of them because I think it's still like a deck of cards being shuffled as I jockey, but I'm hoping to get that squared away in the next week or so. Knock on wood.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And
I know that's a lot of work in the next couple of weeks or next week or so, but it would really be helpful for some of them.
yeah, and even if it's not new information, so to speak, I believe we have existing profiles for most of those that were just mentioned. So we'll certainly flag that with Heritage Associates for any pertinent updates here over the next week or so. And again, I think, you know, certainly circulating by email, but we should also continue to look at the Google Drive as a as a foundational place where folks can go. And I know all the information doesn't always get there in a timely fashion, but we'll try to continue to encourage that structure and that process. And I'll also mention with Queen Anne's County in particular, there is a commissioner from the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture, who is one of our counterpart public commissions sponsored by the state. Miss Eleanor Thompson, excuse me, who has offered to be a bridge with the Queen Anne's County community. She's somebody with roots in the community who has already established relationships with congregations, for example. So I think going into Eastern Shore related conversations, particularly with Queen Anne's County, I as well as her contact information, but there hasn't been like a clear identification of what that role is, but certainly has offered to be a bridge. So I want to appreciate and lift that up. All right, so appreciate that logistics and hearing update. Chris or Hannah, did we have anything coming from the state archives? Any pertinent updates from your end at this time?
Ooh, sorry about that. I got jumped off for a moment.
I was handing it to you. Did you see that?
I did not see that. That's
I'm sorry. And then you popped off. I thought, oh boy,
what hilarious timing.
I wasn't being technically astute.
Well, what can we say? We are just accidentally hilarious. There are not any pertinent updates as far as research that I have to share at the moment. However, I'm looking forward to hearing any updates from Heritage Associates side / Trish, whoever will be in touch with this individual from Queen Anne's, I think you said, who may have a relative who was lynched. So I will keep my eyes peeled for that and come back with any updates.
And Commissioner Snowden did just forward that information by email, so that we've definitely got that tagged as a follow-up step. So
Fabulous.
Thank you for that. And so as far as new business, I see that Giovanni Cassan has joined us for the meeting. So if you are so inclined to introduce yourself, I can give a little background. But we have a student who was introduced to the commission by one of our fellow commissioners, Dr. Nicholas Creary, and has offered research support. So Giovanni, if you wanted to kind of, like I said, if you want to introduce yourself, that'd be great. and we can also then, again, follow up around specific tasks. Perhaps she's stepped away, so we'll leave that space if there's time toward the end. But I believe that's Brett with the couple updates in the messages.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We have located another descendant of Asbury Green. Her name is Diane Evans. She's located in upstate New York. We've not been in touch with her, but she is the great-great-granddaughter of Asbury Green. Secondly, we are doing some research on Whitley's victims, Annie Lau and the sheriff. Sheriff Anderson, his first name escapes me. But also, as Chris knows, in doing the research, we ran across an article that called out by name one of the lynch party victims. And it was kind of odd. It said, nobody knows who did the lynching. However, we do know that J.W. Lyons was involved in the lynching. That's the first time we've seen that. And I think, Chris, you had a similar reaction. So we're trying to figure that out. In the meantime, we've located his great-granddaughter. Her name is Jane Lyon King. And I believe Donna did the work on this, and I believe may still be in the state of Maryland. I'm not quite sure about that. And lastly, on Benjamin Hance, we have, I'll call it, completed the genealogy on him. Some of the questions that we had about his relationship to the Juggins family and who his grandparents may have been, we've satisfied those by, we've been in touch with a relative, Crystal, it's her first name, I don't recall the last name, but her research and our research kind of got locked together. She's been doing some study of the family. So I'll be sharing that with you, David, and uploading it to the Google site within the next couple of days.
That's great. Thank you. Was the just for my own information here on my notes, was the J.W. Lyons, was that individual a perpetrator connected to the Benjamin Hance case or Charles Whitley?
Charles Whitley. Charles Whitley. And that was a prominent family at the time, and we do know that a couple of branches did own slaves during that period. But it's not just a matter of interest, but it's odd the way his participation was announced.
Yeah, and I would say just as a general point, and especially since Amy has been grabbing the reins of a lot of these county-based logistics conversations, we want to, when there are research updates, if those could be sent not only to research committee members, but also, when possible, to the liaison commissioners and the logistics chair, so that the logistic chair now being Amy Millen, and when we're talking about Southern Maryland and that kind of tri-county hearing that might be in development, Michelle Coles is the commissioner that has been handling a lot of that communication. So Brett and Donna, if you have those email addresses, please include those as well on the Southern Maryland update, for example. but I can also make sure that you have those to connect with. And then we already, for Prince George's County, we know, of course, Chris is connected there, as well as I believe Commissioner Barrett as well has had some coordination with the Prince George's. So again, anything related to that research, kind of try to disperse to multiple individuals, so that, again, if it's going into a meeting next week, that they know what they need to know as far as the latest.
I will certainly see that happens. And one other thing I didn't mention, but we have located a descendant of Whitley. Last name is Berryman, Berryman. I'll check with Donna when this meeting is over and see if we have her contact information. But if we do, I will include that in what we send to Amy and the rest of you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm
and-
happy to forward it on to the liaisons if that's helpful.
Absolutely. And I think we had some discussion around this. I can't remember if it was in one of these meetings or more at the executive committee level, but when there is potential descendant outreach, to also include commissioners, to support kind of the research conversation, but especially when it comes to informing somebody who may not be connected to the work. In the case of a potential perpetrator descendant, I believe that should probably come from an official commissioner or the chair of the commission, as opposed to staff of the commission. Sorry if I'm not making sense, but Amy, I guess I'm kind of looking at you where, for example, with this individual that's been potentially identified, it shouldn't just be a cold call from our research staff. So Brett, we can coordinate around the best strategy for that too. But I think there's a distinction between folks that are willingly volunteering and wanting to connect versus those that we're kind of reaching out to and saying you're connected to this in some way.
So
And David, I wanted to just mention, if I didn't, the Berryman, who is doing her own research, has informed us that she's happy to participate in any future hearings or other events. So I will check with Donna, who's having technical problems, and see if we have her contact information and forward that.
David, for clarity on my part, are you also stating that the contact with the descendants should come from the commissioners and not the local coalition or planning group? Unless they already have a relationship with that individual and it's a known, that's different. I'm talking about these unknown.
I don't think I was really thinking about the local committee necessarily, but that's an important aspect. I think I just meant more instead of just coming from Heritage Associates, for example, it should come from Heritage Associates with the voice of the commission, whether that be the chair or a committee chair or something behind it. Because I know we've done that sort of outreach in different ways and gotten varied results.
Perhaps it's a case-by-case conversation with a local planning group,
Okay.
sort of, I would think that if it's an unknown person and nobody's had contact with them, it should come from the commission, because we want to be in conversation with them, even if it's not a full-on oral history, to develop that relationship. But in partnership with local, so it goes in circles. But I think we just have to be really thoughtful about it.
Okay. And so again, whatever these kind of updated connections, Heritage Associates can send to the logistics committee, the liaison commissioner, as well as research committee members, and that can kind of be, like you said, disseminated on a case by case, depending on the strategy that seems most appropriate. Brett, can I ask about? I know that we had talked about the Juggins family and the connection to that case in Southern Maryland, and that was part of what we were going to assign for student research support. Is that support still needed as far as establishing the connection?
I think that support would be helpful in validating what we've done so far. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's follow up on that point as well, and continue to coordinate there.
Were you expecting something, a reaction from me?
Oh, no.
Okay.
That'll be email follow-up. So I do not have any additional items to cover. We are at 3:52. Anything else? I'll leave the floor open if there are any other updates or questions at this time.
Let me ask Chris a question, or anybody else who may be aware of this. Do any of you know anything that's going on around the 7th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education? Any symposiums, seminars, looking at 70 years later where we are?
Now that you say that, Carl, I feel like there's a email posting something that I saw recently, but I'm not remembering it right now. I don't think.
If you happen to come across something,
okay,
send it to me. There's a interesting intellectual debate that's going on, and it's really among a lot of younger people in terms of the Board of Education and where we are. It's interesting how longevity gives you a better perspective on things.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some who think that segregated schools wasn't that bad, and they give you all that rationale for it.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, Hannah, because they hadn't lived during that period of time, the context is very romanticized. They really don't realize that those schools were inferior. There's no question about it. But when you look back on history, there's a tendency to revise it. But anyways, it's a great debate that's going on, mostly on social media, where younger people are exchanging their views as to whether or not, quote, integration was a good thing versus desegregation, which they make a distinction of. So interesting.
Well, it's funny you should ask, Carl, because I'll be part of hosting a discussion this Thursday evening, which I just shared that link in the chat. So of course, anybody here is welcome to, and I apologize for not sharing that earlier with the commission. But we'll have two speakers, one of whom wrote a biography of Charles Hamilton Houston, who was Thurgood Marshall's mentor, as well as a book called Brown in Baltimore, which to my knowledge is kind of the only account that is hyper around it. So please come out. It is only in person. But yeah, and then I know that the National Archives is also hosting a virtual talk, I believe, on the 16th. So I won't selfishly only plug my own program, but I thank you for lifting that up, because we definitely, you know, we historians love anniversaries, so it's a good time to talk and share and get that kind of intergenerational discussion around it as well. Very important.
I also think it either has occurred or there's something planned. David, maybe you know at Coppin University is doing something, or may have already done it. I know what's his name spoke there last week. I'll look it up, and if I'm correct, I'll forward it.
Thank you.
I think that's what it was, because I just looked at my email thread and I see it there. I just put in Brown and it came up.
I must be
All right.
stepping off to another 4 o'clock. If it's okay with everybody, I will say good evening. But thank you all.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So that's all for me. Thank you all for being here. I will say tentatively that next month, the first Monday again, would be our research committee meeting. When that is confirmed and scheduled, that'll appear on the commission page as others have. But we will certainly be in touch if anything changes with that. But thanks everyone for your time, and we'll continue some of these conversations by email.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.